Who's ready to learn?
Just let me know when you're ready to get
You can start.
What happened?
Hi, Carrie. What was that?
Oh, I forgot you actually resided here. Well, the fact that you're always just staring at them the whole time, did a lot of
They probably thought I was the new hire or something.
Wow, Will, I can see your
You're the new guy. I'm the new guy. The new guy that walked in here.
Oh, Philip, you say hi. I see all of you. That's what you're talking about? Insecure. I see his arm. I see all of you. Where did diet come from?
I told you. You did? What? Oh, my. 2 boxes of cookies?
Everybody got ready? All right, we're going to get started. Ready? So for any of you guys who do not know Ryan Vincent, this is Ryan Vincent, my buddy. He's also here in media sales.
That's correct.
And he has done a prospecting little seminar, little thing for another group that he was telling me about. You guys are all blurry. And it's probably because he just did that. And I asked him if he wouldn't mind to do it for this group because during our lunches over the last couple of years, he tells me about a couple of little things he does, and they're always really fun and inspiring and different, and he changes it up all the time. So I thought that his tips and tricks could work really good for you guys. So, Dave, any questions you have? actually take questions all the way through. Or
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can interrupt me. Feel free to just shout out and so forth. I mean, we're all working peers here. So given the fact with what I do with media sales, I tried to do my best to kind of make this apply to what you guys do, because obviously we essentially do the same thing, but we sell to different people. But more or less, this is just a quick deck to walk you through on my style of prospecting and how it's worked for me. So yeah, without further delay, I guess we can get started. All right, prospecting strategies with myself. All right, a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know. As I said, I'm Ryan Vincent. I've worked here at BLR for a little over 5 years. I sell media advertising and event sponsorship for both BLR and H3 Group. I essentially help marketing professionals generate leads through both our two primary safety publications, both in healthcare and the workforce, or I'm sorry, what are we calling it now?
BLR.
BLR, through both BLR and the healthcare side. EHS Daily Advisor and PSQH. So I'm all about safety. A lot of the media that I sell, they kind of overlap with one another, but when it comes to safety, that's essentially the market that I work within. So I've been selling media in both B2C and B2B markets for a little over 10 years now. I actually got my start at a boating publication here in Essex, Connecticut, where I really got the true vein of things. And then I came and joined BLR on a new project, which was the launch of the EHS Media Division, or I should say EHS Media Market, because we cater to an HR market. I hail from Detroit. I'm Midwestern at heart. I moved to Connecticut here a little over 10 years ago, and I'm an avid Detroit Tigers fan. You might even hear me running throughout the office talking to fellow Sox fans about baseball and how we're better and so forth. But last but not least, I consider myself an obsessive prospector. And that's why we're here today, to kind of show you what I do that's somewhat obsessive. So I'm sure you guys have all seen this. You guys are all in sales. The ABC, the Always Be Closing, the great Glengarry Glen Ross movie. So I just want you guys to know I'm not going to bore you to death with 25 slides of all these, memes and motivational shoots and references to all the sales movies you've seen. So, but when I say I'm always closing for meetings. That's a mindset that I utilize when I prospect. So it's not essentially going in and talking about how I'm closing for a particular sale. I'm always closing for meetings when I'm prospecting. The main goal is to find out who you are, get you on the phone so we can speak with you about our solutions and what we can do for you. So overall, my prospecting strategy really boils down to these 5 points. And these are 5 true things that I live by on a daily basis as I work through sales here. Time management, very important, which we will definitely highlight in a big way. I'm sure you guys have all seen this, but do your research. You've got to do your research when reaching out to clients. I'm gonna touch base on a statement I call "Show Me You Know Me" a lot, but doing your research really caters to that. In essence, we're closing for meetings. The whole style of what I do is to essentially set up an appointment with a particular prospect. I'm also going to touch base on what someone taught me about listening clients into selling themselves. I'm sure you guys all heard too. Listening is the key thing to sales here. But I'm going to show you somewhat of a little trick that folks taught me, that you can really essentially ask the appropriate questions that you can listen to clients into selling themselves. And last but not least, be yourself in everything you do. When you personalize your emails and you're reaching out to folks, always be yourself. Let your personality shine. A lot of us are in sales because of that, and it really rings true with people and builds good rapport. So our first point here is time management. So I wanted to display a quick example of the day in the life of Ryan. This is a schedule that I adhere to on a daily basis. You'll notice the asterisk at the bottom. Never does a day look exactly like this. However, this schedule is used simply for the purpose of creating a foundation and a routine to live by every day, a mindset. So I usually start my day between 8 and 9 a.m. I'm catching up maybe on a few emails that had come in overnight. any voicemails that I had missed from the day before, or any live chats within, some of my peers if they need help, or if I need help, or if we're bouncing off ideas and so forth. But through the schedule, as you see, essentially from 9 until 3 p.m., it's prospecting. That's it. It's sitting down, really zoning in, and reaching out, which I will touch base on too with a system that I utilize in reaching out. But 9 to 3, my mindset is I'm prospecting for new business. Yes, we have active business. Yes, there's meetings such as this and so forth that come about. Hence, there's never a day that looks exactly like this. But by establishing this, I've known and worked by this for the last, I would say, about 6 years now. And it really, so when you essentially get off task, you can always go back to this, and it makes your mind fluently and work that way. So, because I've often noticed some data that says that once you get interrupted, it really takes you about 20 minutes to get back to that peak performance level that you're at. So by always thinking this way, you continuously will pursue what you're here to do. So the most valuable part of the entire prospecting process is your own time. Be selfish about it. I had a sales mentor teach me that, and we're going to talk a little bit about when you're closing for meetings, that all has to do with the essence of time. Your time is very valuable. The more time you spend prospecting, the more folks you can bring in. The less time you do, the less you're going to bring in. So keep that in mind. The most valuable part of the prospecting process is your own time. Be selfish about it. So in regards to establishing a routine, my routine, when I do my 8 to 9 in the morning, aside from my chats and so forth, I create a to-do list every night, which is actually my last bullet point plan for the next day. But off that to-do list, I always look to knock out the most important item first, whether it was tackling a particular obstacle with a client, or solving an issue, or generating a giant proposal that needs to be out, a lot faster than usual. So I always try to knock the most important item first. Plus, they say when you take responsibility and acknowledge that it's the most important and actually tackle it, it really gets you in a motivational spirit to kind of pursue through the day. You probably heard this. Sales is somewhat of a numbers game, as cliche as that is. I like to do a minimum of 20 touches to new prospects per day. So that can include an active customer, but you're trying to upsell, or some new business or business development or what have you. But I live by the number of doing a minimum of 20 touches to new prospects per day, which is essentially 100 per week, 400 per month. With each of those touches, and when I'm labeling out new accounts and so forth, and I will touch base on this a little later, between both a vertical and a horizontal contact, but I like to do a minimum of 2 horizontal contacts per account. A horizontal contact isn't necessarily your decision maker, but this is somebody that influences the decision, or can at least supply you with some information as to where your decision maker is, and what really steers his decision overall. So having 2 of those as a backup is also necessary should your decision maker leave the company, and then it goes dark and you have no one, you have somebody now to reach out to from a horizontal standpoint to actually, reestablish the relationship and so forth. The next slide here I'm going to get into is managing the 4 quadrants of territory planning daily. I had and parts and bits of this is a piece of some training that I received a few years ago. But this is something, the 4 quadrants is essentially how I organize my different suspects and prospects, which I'm going to touch base on here in a minute. And of course, as I'm going to keep mentioning throughout this presentation, always be closing for meetings. As I mentioned, personalize everything, and plan for the next day, which is really crucial. So on my day calendar in the slide before, when I show the last half hour, I always set at least a to-do list of 5 items to do the following day. All right, the 4 quadrants here. So the first of the 4 quadrants is your current client. All right, somebody that has signed up with you and so forth. In the marketing world that I live in, that we sell to, we tend to work with the same prospect on an annual basis. So when I meet a current client, they've already come in, they've run a schedule or so forth, or they bought something from you. One of the things is, when's the next meeting scheduled? You never want those guys to fall off the radar, so you want to keep that relationship going. So when's the next meeting scheduled with your current client? Prospects. I consider a prospect somebody who actually accepted a meeting or has established a time frame to meet with me to discuss a solution. So, so when I'm essentially reaching out to folks that haven't had a meeting yet because we're closing for meetings, I'm talking about suspects, a finite number from your universe list, and the goal there is to close a scheduled meeting with that suspect. When I say a finite number, depending on your business and what you work in, that could be, I essentially have 10 to 15 running at one time, and these are folks that I look to reach out to, to score a meeting so that we can set up a conversation. And then your universe is all folks, all other suspects that are not being worked on, but you're marketing to, essentially folks that you have, pushed through a few times, just maybe haven't received a response, so they're going to flow back into your universe. And I actually set up a spreadsheet outside of Salesforce that tracks all 4 of these for me, and I move them around. And then, essentially when you come up from a suspect to a prospect and a current client, then it's embedded through Salesforce. So this is just kind of my entryway that I utilize that. Any questions regarding this at all? All right. You all still with me?
I like the suspect.
Suspects? Yeah, very good. Usual suspects. Research, as I had mentioned, always do your research. With the power of the web now, there's so much out there to find out anything on anybody. So when you're looking for, if you're selling to an HR manager or a safety manager, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, I'm not necessarily saying scope out their Facebook and find their kids' names, but look for some key attributes that, maybe they went to a school that you know of with a, a sports team that you're a fan of or something. Any kind of tidbit that can kind of help you show me you know me when you're reaching out to these people and give them a reason to, have an appointment with you. Search recent press releases. There's press releases all over the web. Half the time these are generated and they don't even really go anywhere. They just reside on the web, and they're just simple announcements, whether they're launching a new product or they've had a change in corporate structure or so forth. But that will really give you some information based on where that business is, what they're doing, and can give you some more ammo in reaching out to these folks. Visit their website, and this is something that I live by when I'm looking at new customers and reaching out. I visit their website and I write down at least 2 characterizing items that you can leverage to show me you know me. In the marketing world that I work in, where I sell advertising, I'm essentially looking at content, new products, anything that they have floating throughout their website, because then I can use that as ammo when I'm reaching out to a particular suspect, if you will, to score them and make them a prospect. But the goal here is to establish a reason for reaching out, because nobody wants that just generic email that every other salesperson is selling. You really want to personalize it. So, closing for meetings. This is what I keep talking about here. So, closing for meetings, I like to work by what I call reference communicating. So I had touched base on this earlier with a vertical contact and a horizontal contact. So a vertical, you're interacting and building relationships only with people who work within your client's target department, such as the HR department or the EHS department, or if you're working with a purchasing manager or so forth. He's ultimately your decision maker. A horizontal contact, as I mentioned, can leverage a horizontal contact. Is someone who leverages influencers and references who work outside your client's target department. So this could be any other department: sales, product, business development, line of business, you name it, anywhere outside of your HR department or your safety department. I mean, when you walk up to somebody at a show, half the time the guy's working the booth is a sales guy. So he's not necessarily have the ability to buy something from you, but the guy contains valuable information that can lead you to the decision maker, or tell you what influences the decision maker, or tell you where their current business is. So you essentially capture that information, and you're going to utilize it to reach out to these people. Horizontal contacts definitely increase your chance of getting that first appointment, because it goes back to the show me you know me. People want to talk with people that it sounds like you know them and you did their research. So you never want to approach this without research. So events, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of these can help you locate and build horizontal contacts. You can even, I'm sure you guys all have done this, especially the ADRs. You go to LinkedIn, you type in HR manager with a plus sign and a particular state, and they will all pop up in a giant feed in LinkedIn. And you can literally piece through there and click on and see what folks do. I also want to mention, like, for instance, the folks who don't have the paid version of LinkedIn, When you click on it sometimes profile, and it just shows you their name and title, and it doesn't give you the rest of their profile, and you're like, what is this guy's history? Cut and paste his name, like literally cut his name and title and from LinkedIn and paste it into Yahoo or Google or what have you, and it'll all pop up, and they'll even give you an option to go to the cache page, and when you click that, that'll take you back to the page and show you all the information. Yeah, so there's a couple of tricks that allow you to do that. It's there. LinkedIn's just telling you it won't give it to you because you're not paying for it, but it's all filtered through the search engine. So negotiating for time. There's two ways I'm going to do this. I'm going to start with the phone. So I know people say, you probably even heard that cold calling is dead. There's a part of me that has very strong beliefs there, but a mix of utilizing the phone with email really does work. A lot of folks, I've had folks tell me, Ryan, you're more professional than some of the folks that have reached out to me because of the fact that you emailed and then you called, and then you emailed and you called. So you have to really present a nice mix to these folks. But when the whole goal here is to negotiate for time. We're closing for a meeting, so you want to negotiate your time in order to score that meeting with that particular prospect. So reach out with a customized voicemail. Ideally, you're going to want to use the horizontal reference relationship. So, for instance, you met that gentleman at the trade show. You're going to reach out, hey, Brian, I stopped by your booth down at the ASSC conference. I talked to John, great sales guy. Tell me about your new product launch coming up next month. He mentioned, something. He mentioned to me that you're looking for help with lead generation. So I wanted to reach out. You want to be with a positive greeting, but you want to be very brief. And like I said, you want to show me you know me. You're presenting an appetizer here. You're not necessarily selling. You don't want to sell on that first touch. You don't want to say, hey, it's Renee at BLR. We have this awesome safety.blr.com library and da-da-da-da-da. You really don't want to get really too much into even presenting what exactly you're going to provide them from a sales standpoint, but you want to give them an appetizer of what problem you can solve. So don't sell, but present the appetizer. One of the key things here is indicating an exact date and time that you can meet. You'll be surprised how many people, if you just say, hey, I'm looking for a call, they're not going to respond. But if you're saying, hey, do you have some time on Thursday at 2 p.m. or Wednesday at 4, people they automatically want to almost look at their calendar, see if that time's even available, especially if you've already made a solid effort here. So it tends to produce somewhat more of a better response rate. After you've left this voicemail, you're going to send a supporting email. I like to do this literally the same day. Sometimes I hang up the phone and then I send the email. Sometimes you can wait 24 hours, but send it, depending on where you are with that particular prospect and how many times you've reached out. You want to send a supporting email and ask that they reply to confirm their availability. If they accept your request for a meeting, great. Send them a meeting invite, with a call-in number and a time, and it locks them up on your calendar. That way it's scheduled on your calendar and it's scheduled on their calendar. And in essence here, you want to keep control of the basketball. You don't want to say, you don't want to leave it hanging. You want to keep reminding him if he doesn't respond even after the second time, is there another date and time and so forth. So another quote that kind of goes with this, and this is a quote from a mentor that had taught me a lot of with the sales and this whole closing for meetings. But if you're not on their calendar, then you are simply not relevant. So if they say, hey, yeah, send me some information or call back in 3 months or we're not ready to do anything, you're not relevant yet. You haven't established that core to really, you haven't sparked his interest. So the idea here is to close a meeting with enough of presenting that little appetizer so that you're on their calendar and you become relevant. Because once you're on their calendar, it's a scheduled time. From then on, even if they don't show up or if they have to move it, there's almost a level of guilt there because you're going to keep sending over a meeting invite and keep talking about, or asking them when you can get together again. So negotiating for time through email. A lot of what we do is cold emailing before we lead to a call. So use a customized subject line, ideally using a horizontal reference. Reaching out or introduction for, John Smith at the ASSC conference. Then you want to use very similar to the voicemail, positive greeting with a very brief introduction. Again, you want to establish the fact, show me you know me. Hey, John told me to reach out, said you need some help with lead generation. You want to present that appetizer as a key benefit for why they should reply. Again, don't sell. You can trial close for a scheduled meeting. One of the cool or key terms that somebody taught me was using the please advise. So in some, I gotten into some arguments with some folks, some constructive arguments on how that works and how that doesn't work. But with please advise, it's a call to action. It's respectful, and it's not too demanding, but at the same time, it can seem more urgent. So then folks will tend to reply, get the better response rate. So it's a good way to trial close when you're asking for a scheduled meeting. Hey, does Thursday at 2 p.m. work? Please advise. After that, leave a supporting voicemail and encourage a reply to your email, reiterating the time that you're looking to speak with them. If they accept your request, again, send a meeting invite. I live by meeting invites. Most of the world lives by meeting invites. Hence the fact why you guys all made it here today. If no reply after 48 hours, I'm going to show you here, you then are going to send a take two email, or essentially a follow-up email. I refer to it as a take two. If no reply, I actually have a template that I use called My Bad, and I've even used My Bad in the email subject line. It's suggesting you're going to contact someone else, and usually that's where your two other horizontal references come in. That tends to spark almost the fact that, hey, I didn't respond to this guy, now he's going to reach out to my peers, they're going to find out I didn't respond to him, blah, blah, blah. So then they're going to at least give you some information. So here's a live example of a horizontal contact. This is actually a recent one from March. I was reaching out to a particular agency that represents the company. I had met a gentleman at a show. Happy Friday, received your name and information from Jason over at Gore. Him and I spoke this morning. He mentioned you run media planning, so I definitely wanted to reach out. I presented a little appetizer. I represent my the publications that I represent and my audience. Below my signature is actually an entire link to our media kit. Does your schedule permit for a quick call next week, say Monday or Tuesday? I should have probably been a little bit more specific here and asked for a detailed time. However, I didn't. I went back after what I had kind of somewhat just told you guys. But I used both versions. Sometimes you want to go a little lax with some folks. Sometimes you want, after they haven't replied, you can use it as the second term of the follow-up. So, so here, my take two email is, these are very short and brief. When you write letters to folks and essays and telling them, hey, I know you went to Michigan, you're a Wolverine fan, I lived in Detroit, da, 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 they don't even know who you are yet. So you can essentially rub them the wrong way here. So the key to following up is staying within the same thread of your email, of your original email. So you literally hit the forward button. You can change in the subject line to the FW to RE. And then, good afternoon, Bill. Quick follow-up to my note below from Friday. Do you have some time to connect for a quick introduction later this week? You don't want to really reiterate your current message because you want to essentially refer him down to the current message or to your original message. So this actually turned out pretty well for me after the second touch. Doesn't always work out this way, but I definitely had to present a successful story to show you that what I'm doing actually works. So hi, Ryan, are you available for a call next week, Monday or Tuesday? So the goal here was to get a scheduled meeting. We got a scheduled meeting. However, it doesn't always work that way. So, but actually I'm going to back up. When it does work, and you do get them on the phone, you're going to want to listen clients into selling themselves. So this is something that I still am working on throughout my day-to-day business. But you need to create a rapport and trust so that your client will engage in honest dialogue. Asking questions and listening obviously builds that trust. But one of those key traits here is people respond to their own words and ideas with far greater conviction than anyone else's. So, therefore, they may not believe statements you make, but will absolutely believe their answers to your questions. So, exceptional salespeople literally listen clients into selling themselves. So, I keep a list of questions at my desk. I have basic questions, old questions, questions that I'm new stuff. I'm constantly Googling new ways to reach out to people. But the key is to ask open-ended questions so that these folks can literally tell you the story. Everybody wants to tell you their story. And based on what they tell you, you're positioning these questions, down the road of, steering them towards your solution and why it makes sense. That's the author of that quote. So let's say the meeting didn't work out. So you reached out twice. You sent the first email, the second email, you did the follow-up. 72 hours later, you still don't have no response, so you'll send the my bad email where you're referencing two horizontal contacts. Hello, John. Looks like marketing fails outside, looks like marketing falls outside your responsibilities. Thus, please accept the apology for clogging up your inbox. Lastly, who do you feel is the best contact regarding advertising for your organization, either Tom Jones or Lisa Riley? Any guidance you can provide is greatly appreciated. Please advise. I've gotten more responses off this email than, and honestly, some of the times it turns out that the guy that I was reaching out to wasn't the actual decision maker, but was a horizontal contact that influences the decision maker. So then he would reply and say, you know what, this wasn't suited for me. Forgive me for the delay in response, because he feels guilty here and he knows I'm going to reach out to his peers. If Tom Jones is actually the guy you want to talk to, let me introduce you, or I'll forward your email, or so forth. So this simple three-step process with these emails is the process I use in all of my prospects. So back to my 4 quadrants, when I say the person I was originally reaching out to here was a suspect. If he didn't reply and accept the meeting, he didn't become a prospect. So I sent him the no response, my bad email. And I do that with these 3 sets of emails. And then if I don't even get a response here, I shift you back into my universe. I'll mark it to you, and then I'll usually start reaching out to one of the other horizontal contacts that I had listed here.
You have a question?
I do?
Yes.
Was it 72 hours from the
follow-up.
What's that?
72 hours.
Oh, so what I like to do is the initial email, usually you want to send that follow-up email anywhere from 48 to 72 hours from the initial email, and then you send the my bad email, same thing, 48 to 72 hours afterwards. You want to give some folks some room to breathe here. If you send Monday, then again on Tuesday, then again on Thursday, they know you're after their money. They essentially know that in the long run, but you come on too strong. You don't want to be too aggressive. At the same time, you want to respect their time. Here's another example of an introduction, and I'm going to touch base on one of my final slides back here about templates. But all of these emails, essentially, you can create as a template, and you just plug a company name and a name. It helps you move a lot faster when you're prospecting. You can essentially cut and paste. And when I say I'm reaching out to 20 new prospects on a daily basis, that's a minimum of 20 prospects. I can hit 20 people with a cut and paste with this email in less than a half hour. So sometimes I've done as many as 150 in one day. The more folks you reach out to, obviously, the better response you're going to get and the more appointments you're going to get. So, but here's another template I use as far as an introduction. I like to use it and approach it from a level of humility. Good morning, Mike. Please pardon my cold reach out. Not sure if you can even help me, but thought you could possibly point me in the right direction. Would you happen to know the appropriate person who handles the marketing responsibilities for Nexar? And then I get a little bit specifically as it pertains to demand generation with content syndication. Then I have a quick, you don't even have to necessarily put this. Sometimes I add this in, but my name's Ryan. I'm reaching out. This is what I represent, and I simply want to start a marketing dialogue and share some information you may or may not be familiar with. So I essentially answered that question, but it leads into, maybe I'm not that familiar with it. So, and any help would be graciously appreciated. And you can use this as your initial, from an initial introduction, and then use the same process where you're reaching out again with a follow-up 48 to 72 hours, CCing on the same thread, sending the email below again, which is a statement I like to use a lot, sending the below email again in case it was not received. You'd be surprised how many people feel guilty that they didn't get your original email, or they simply missed it too. So, any questions there in regards to closing meetings? There may be some at the end, so we're almost there. Last but not least, be yourself. So LinkedIn invites. Don't send the normal invite. It sucks, to add me to your LinkedIn network. Get creative with it as best as you can. I like to. Most folks, even though it's a professional network, it still has an aspect of a social media play. Like, people complain about the stuff that they post on LinkedIn should be for Facebook. We'll play with it a little bit. People get a little bit more personal on there. So I actually use this, and I actually stole this from somebody, part of it. But I reached out to this guy, Justin. Spring training has started. I'm trying to make the Cubs roster. I think I've got a shot at replacing first baseman Anthony Rizzo. In case that doesn't work out, I'm going to take 2 seconds to write a mildly creative and entertaining invitation, even though you know what this whole thing is about, and any text is probably unnecessary. So link to me, and then I'll troll your network for opportunities, contact dates, etc. all the while getting your permission at every step. Of course, I'm joking. Let's connect. You'd be surprised how many times I get a response out of it. You know what I mean? Like, they don't just accept, they actually reply to the message and say, that was hilarious, or wow, or, you know, or they turn out to be, and usually when I'm reaching out, this particular person was based out of Chicago, so I was trying to safely assume that he was a Cubs fan, so, but I'm saying get creative with it a little bit, you know, and this can also work with email too. If you've hit them up so many times and you keep throwing them back into your universe, get a little bit creative like this. You'd be surprised. Show, not only do you show me you know me, but show people that you're human. So some wrap-up tips here. Like I said, with closing for meetings, become a meeting maniac. When I say I'm an obsessive prospector, I like to become a meeting maniac. All day, all I look for is scoring a meeting with a particular person so that we can sell them some advertising. Personalize every message with templates. So create templates with your messaging. Create versions of what I displayed to you here. I'll also send around a copy of the deck. Feel free to try out what I had sent you verbatim if you'd like. But but personalize it a little bit more, you know, add, you know, you can add that when you're sending out your little appetizer to get folks, you know, to respond to your email, get a little personal with it. Use some of the references you found in your research. I also like to share leads in articles. So for instance, when folks fall back into your universe quadrant, and those are folks that you're just going to continuously market to after you tried so many attempts, share leads, share articles. You know, if you're finding information that they had maybe I don't know if it's a bad example. Maybe they had an HR incident or a safety incident or something like that, and you found out. Share some articles on maybe some of our content that can help them. That might be a good way of doing that. What I like to do, and something that I've failed big at multiple times, that I literally had to get this point across through very tightly. Start small, think big. So when I first started here and I was selling, based on coming from my previous job, I was used to having a lot of business in my book. I didn't have anything when I started here. So when I would get a client and score the time for a proposal, I was pitching big projects. Well, I was failing at that because those folks had never worked with us before. We were a new media outlet. So I started thinking, I started small investments, get people in the door and so forth, and to make clients for life. Then you can get into the bigger picture. That has seemed to work out overall over the past 5 years. Social selling, obviously what I had just showed you from the LinkedIn post, but from the LinkedIn invite, but also post stuff relevant to what you do. I mean, I see lots of folks from BLR posting everything from our events to content that we come up with to, you know, images of our awesome National Sales Summit, those kind of stuff. Show people that not only that you're active in the market, but that you're working in the market, that you have some type of influence, and you're sharing applicable content to those folks that are within your network. You'll be surprised how many folks that I've run into, and I finally got an introduction after I had connected with them on LinkedIn, or I'm a friend with one of their peers, and they said, hey, you know, I noticed that, you know, report you were telling about, I saw you posted it on LinkedIn. So people do take notes of that stuff. Never quit ever. So when you're working with prospects, some people might disagree with me here, but I like to never quit. You go through my 4 quadrants, and then if I haven't still scored an appointment and I throw you back into the universe, I start the process over again. How long? That might even be a good question. How long do you wait after you've done your double 72-hour follow-ups and you threw them back in the universe? Market to them when it's relevant. You can do it the next week. You can do it the next month if you have something that's relevant currently or something special you guys are offering, whether it's a free trial, what have you. Whenever you think it's relevant, reach out to them. But I would definitely encourage that you reach out at least once to twice a month. If you're really not getting a response, then you can take it down to once per month. But you want to definitely keep them on the radar and never quit ever. I can't tell you how many folks that I am working with now that have either even said no or never responded to me for over a 12-month span, but by continuously utilizing this process, we finally got them to score a meeting. So last but not least, ask for feedback and referrals. A lot of sales folks don't like to do this, but even if it was a good sale, bad sale, what have you, if you got a good rapport with that person, you always want to ask how well we did, because you'd be surprised how many times they'll tell you sometimes it's a bad situation, but you can turn a bad situation into a good situation, into a new sale. So you always want to ask for feedback And you always want to ask for referrals because you can always help out their fellow peers. So that was it. I hope I didn't bore you guys too much. I hope you guys can take at least something out of this today. Any questions?
I have one. Any cool subject lines?
Types of subject lines?
Yeah, like any. My bad.
Yeah,
like
my bad as work. Yeah. So you're always. So what I like to use, you want to keep it short and to the point. Introduction. I usually put, and I always start out, even if it's a new thread, I always use the RE : introduction because it always seems like it was already an original message. A lot of people are catching on to that trick, but I still live by it, because it almost appears in your inbox as if it was a conversation that has already began or it was forwarded from somebody else. So I think it works a lot better. So yeah, and I would ultimately keep your subject line down to literally 3 words. So anything you can do. If you're going to write meeting info from 426 call with Dave Ironman, like you don't have to necessarily do that. List out exactly what you're sending, information for the safety portal or something like that. But try to trim it down, keep it to 3 words. I have used on my follow-up, I've used in parentheses take 2, which is my follow-up email. And then on the 3rd email, I'll use in parentheses my bad, where you're apologizing and then listing two other horizontal references. But you want to keep it short and sweet. And if you are referencing a horizontal contact, you want to put that horizontal contact name in the subject line. So you could probably, a lot of this information not only was it taught to me, but like I mentioned, I am constantly scouring the web. You can go to Google and literally search the best email subject lines, and you'll probably get 10 pages of results anywhere from HubSpot to LinkedIn to so forth that will show you different data sets on what has worked well with response rate, but ultimately they all boil down to using minimal amount of words, 3 words. So try to make it as simplistic as possible. Also with your emails, you really don't want to keep them more than 3 paragraphs, 100 words. Even that's too much, especially with your initial email. With your follow-up emails, obviously, as you've seen with my template, it's 1 sentence because you're essentially just drawing attention to the original email, and you're going to do that via voicemail as well. So I encourage you to use the phone to direct people to your messages on email because everybody wants to communicate via email. They don't necessarily want to get on the phone. And if you leave a message, and I am actually guilty of this, Denise will tell you, I leave my phone number as a callback. Data supports the fact that you don't even have to do that. People aren't going to call you back. They just won't. They don't. They don't. But you'll score that meeting if you keep referencing your email when you go through the voicemail. Does that answer your question?
And I like that even all of your emails are really short because most people are reading on a phone anyway.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah. Most email, everybody reads on their phone. And this is another thing. This is a good point you brought up. So let's say you've worked this process with a particular prospect for 3 months now and you're not getting anywhere. Try stuff that's different. A lot of people say that the best times to email folks are in the very early morning hours as well as the very late evening hours, after work hours. I've scored an appointment from a contact that I've emailed on a Saturday afternoon. I'm not telling you to take out your Saturday afternoon, sit down with your laptop, and send out a minimum of 20 prospects. But let's say you're not getting anywhere with a particular prospect. As cliche as it sounds, think outside the box. Try to email them at first thing in the morning, late in the evening, on a Saturday. There's actually data that supports there's a better response rate with sending stuff, especially in the B2B world, on a weekend because, we've all checked, your email comes through, it pops up on your phone, you're like, why is this guy emailing me on a Saturday? Well, you got your attention. So it's another way to look at it.
One of the things that comes up almost daily is the fact that LinkedIn is starting to block us more and more when we're trying to look at that information. Can you go back to what you were talking about in the beginning with effective ways of taking that information, Yahoo or whatever? Because a lot of our folks used to have sales navigators,
yep, and
now they don't, and so they're running into those issues trying to find that same information.
Yeah, absolutely. So good question. The Sales Navigator is also evolving, so has LinkedIn. It's actually evolved a lot over the last 6 months. You've seen it's now blocking different ways that you can do things that we used to be able to get for free. So you're essentially looking for a particular name, right, or an HR manager for a particular company. So I would suggest trying your best in LinkedIn first and using search. So when you're going to say you want to know the HR manager you're going to use a space, you're going to use a plus sign, another space, and then the name of the company. But when you're using the plus signs in search, it helps the search engine dial down what to search for based on categories as opposed to putting it as in one line. So use the plus sign. And when you do that, it's going to give you some information based on, it might not give you that actual company or that actual person. It might even just say LinkedIn member, which is always, you're like, great, I have to pay for this to get this guy's information. Well, usually it'll bring you to that page and it'll say LinkedIn member. So then go to Google and search it. Search HR manager for, whatever company it is. Same variation. Use the HR manager with the plus sign. You can use this in Google. I use Yahoo. And then stuff will pop up. If it's not that, sometimes or most of the time, their LinkedIn page will pop up. Like it'll say their name and stuff with their LinkedIn page. So sometimes it'll give you a version where there's a little type that says the cache version, CACHED. When you click on that, that'll take you to the cache page, and the cache page will actually display everything that's on that web page, so you're no longer blocked. That's one way. If it doesn't work, sometimes you can also, HR managers are quoted, whether it's in a press release or so forth, or there's an own email address. Or let's say it's the name of the person, but you don't know their email address, Hank Williams at rcr.com. Well, you got to think about it. Every company works somewhat similar, same way. Look for a similar variation email. Most salespeople for every company like to put their emails either on their LinkedIn profiles or somewhere on Twitter or what have you. So if you find one of their salespeople is, the guy's name's Larry Garner and it's lgarner@rcr.com, well, then now your prospect is most likely going to have a similar email variation. So then you can essentially plug and play. I've done that. I've done there and sat and sent 6 emails in a row to 6 different addresses till I found the right one. Your email is going to kick back and tell you, this server isn't here or this person doesn't exist or what have you, try again. But eventually you'll get one, you won't get that message. You're like, that must be the right one. So, yeah.
Regarding LinkedIn, too, when you are doing profiles, do you have yourself set up that they can't see who you are or that they can?
I do have that they can see me. Okay. So there are people that don't like that aspect because you're essentially, especially if you're prospecting someone hard, this person visited my page 10 times in the last week. Well, yeah. Usually when you visit someone's page, LinkedIn only registers at one time. So if you go back most of the time, at least I have noticed it. So we've tried it at home. I had my wife go to my LinkedIn page like 30 times, and it literally told me she only went there one time in the past 5 days. So I think that resets after a week or 2 weeks. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I like to be visible because I want them to know who I am. And then set up your LinkedIn profile to demonstrate what you do. Literally have a summary that says, I'm Kathy at VLR and I help people with their compliance issues, or something like that. Yeah, but I mean, be frank about it. And you can put that you're in sales. Nobody wants to, look like, a sheep's in wolf clothing kind of thing. You know what I mean? So you want to literally state what you do, state that you're in sales, have a nice summary that kind of details exactly what you do, how you help people. There's all kinds of different things on LinkedIn now, like through SlideShare and so forth that they own, that you can actually put in, little PowerPoint tidbits or links to direct pages to your events and so forth. So if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll see it has a summary of what I do, who I represent, and then it lists, like I have a media kit for each of my properties. I'll have a link to like our VLR Safety Summit event and so forth. So that way if they go, because most people go, who's Ryan Vincent and why did he check out my page? Why did he check me out? So then he's going to click on my page and he's going to find out who I am. So it's essentially doing marketing for you with very little work.
You don't mind if I feel shamelessly from your...
Not at all. Not at all. Where do you think I got it? Yeah. That most people, be original, but at the same time, look for what works. If you see, someone's LinkedIn profile and you're like, wow, this really looks great. Yeah, don't necessarily plagiarize it verbatim, but yeah, take that information, personalize it to make it work for you and so forth. So the landscape's constantly evolving and changing. So you want to kind of keep that constantly updated, but at the same time, look for new ways to update it and lay out your information. Yeah.
Somebody said, not interested, I already have another HR company, or thank you,
What's that entail, in other words? What are you sending them? Okay. Well, your universe is your marketing to them, right? So you can use blanket emails if you want. I don't encourage it, but you're going to want to send them information that details what we do, not necessarily a brief shout out of we're BLR and here's a bullet list of all we do, but try to find stuff based on your research that's relevant to them. So yeah, maybe they already have that HR solution. Well, maybe we've introduced something that company hasn't yet. So keep them up to breath with relevant information as into what we're doing that's new. I mean, we're constantly launching new stuff, from new daily advisors to training portals to SCORM content pieces, and you name it. Like, just throw that stuff into an email and let them know. And I like to highlight one specific thing or so forth. Or let's say, or maybe you guys have free trial offers, I believe, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe use that as a last resort, saying, you know what, here's a free trial, to do this for 14 days or what have you. Don't quote me on all that because I don't know exactly how all that works. But yeah, you want to keep them abreast up to all that information that's new and relevant to them, to give them an idea of that you know what you're doing, that we offer a good solution, and that when that time comes, that they're thinking of you as well. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. And you wouldn't be opposed at all to saying, I know you're happy with your current vendor, just want to introduce you to something brand new we've launched that maybe they don't have.
So,
right?
Yeah, so actually here's a perfect example. When I first started building business here for the EHS Daily Advisor, I had a lot of people saying no. I'm in a very competitive landscape where I compete with like 6 other publications, so I can't tell you how many people said, even after the 3rd attempt, they just no and send an email, right? So I threw them back into my universe. Well, a good example is a current customer of ours named Draeger. They do gas detection. I actually had, he said no. That was a flat-out no email. Well, I threw him back in the universe, and I kept him abreast of it. I sent him a manual media kit. And then in February, after he said no in October, I sent him, I said, hey, we're doing a special research project on gas detection. Here's what it entails. I thought you might be at least interested in hearing about this. And a tagline I like to use at the end of that is, let me know if you would like to talk further. Actually, that credit is due to my boss, Paul Manko. I stole that from him. But he's used that as a sign-up where it's, let me know if you would like to talk further. So it's not essentially demanding an appointment, but it's letting them know, all right, Ryan thought of me. This is actually really relevant to what I do. And you know what? I don't actually have to agree to an appointment, but I'm going to give them a shout because, this is really interesting. Long story short is we scored that. We set up a call. Brian, I'd like to talk more about this, and we got them. And now, 4 years later, they do business with us every year. So I would probably say out of the people who say no, probably 60% of the people that are active customers with me gave me some variation of no, or I'm not interested. I've even had someone say, take me off your list all the time. So you take them off your list, wait 3 months, and then hit them again.
You didn't mean forever when you said that.
Like I said, never, ever quit. Any other questions?
And these are all going to be available, this whole presentation, so if you need to shamelessly steal any of his emails.
Absolutely. I have examples for days, to be quite honest with you. Thanks to Mimecast, I have everything that I've ever sent ever. But my email address is up here, as well as my extension, as well as my Twitter tag. I'm actually not as prevalent on Twitter as I should be, but I definitely do post things up there. But feel free to give me a shout or shoot me off, a copy of what if you want me to take a look at it, I'd be happy to do that.
And what about your questions, your open-ended questions that you have?
Yeah, open-ended questions. So I'm constantly searching for stuff on new ways, but I actually keep a basic list and I can actually send you guys a copy of this. It's the top 30 open-ended questions, 3 categories of information gathering, the qualifying process, as well as establishing rapport, trust, and credibility. I really like the establishing rapport section. I mean, we're asking questions like, how did you get involved in, what kind of challenges are you facing now? What's the most important priority to you with this? Why is that? Ask why a lot. Like literally like a 4-year-old, ask why. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people like to talk themselves in circles, and essentially you're listening to them sell themselves.
If you don't mind to email them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
I'm curious,
Asking for referrals? No, I mean, I don't necessarily have a template. I'd be happy to create one for you, but I mean, I'm literally just asking, is there, and it's usually in a phone conversation, not so much in an email, because I like to do with all my, I sell advertising campaigns. I always do a post-call follow-up, so I always say, hey, your campaign just ended, like immediately after it ended. Let's get on the phone, let's talk about, what you liked, what you didn't like, and so forth. And then in there, I'm usually plugging, is there anybody else that that, could really greatly benefit from utilizing this or so forth. So more often than not, a lot of folks don't give me a referral, but the more you ask, the more referrals you will get. I would probably say, as much as I ask, probably 35-40% of the time they'll give me a name or somebody. It doesn't always work out, no, but you never know. There are people, especially in our world within marketing, a lot of these, like within safety, if you're selling PPE products, a lot of those PPE products are sold through distributors. So one way, shape, or form, all the marketing directors know one another. So the referral network tends to work a little better for me. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's really just be frank. Do you know anybody else that could, better utilize or that could use the same success that we provided you? Yeah.
I think it would work better referralized for us, our products, because we know how to marketing. A lot of times they're like, this is mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I agree with that.
Any other questions? No? Good?
Good?
Yeah, great job.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks, fella.
Good?
Oh. The only thing that I ate two